and welcome to the GitLab 12.10 monthly kickoff call. My name is Scott Williamson. I'm the EVP of Product Management at GitLab, and I'm happy to host today. First, want to acknowledge that I'm sure everyone is feeling disruption and uncertainty because of the global situation. Many of our contributors and customers are scrambling right now to figure out how to work remotely or leaving offices and such. This is something that GitLab has done for years. We've been committed to an all remote company structure. And so we've learned a lot as we've done that, and in typical GitLab fashion have written down how we work and a lot of the things that we've learned. So in case you're in a situation where you're trying to learn how to do remote on the fly, we have a ton of helpful resources for you. If you search on allremote.info, you will find it, or I will share my desktop here with the actual URL. It's about.gitlab.com/company/culture/allremote. Tons of resources here that we hope are helpful to you if you're in that situation. So with that, let's get back to the usual kickoff business. We are planning for 12.10. We have a kickoff page. It's about.gitlab.com/direction/kickoff. If you would like to follow along or reference the things we talk about later, it's all here. We're going to have 4 of our leaders talk about what we're doing in each what we call section. A section is a grouping of stages and categories that we are working on. And we're going to start from the bottom this time. And Josh is going to cover enablement. David will cover secure and defend. Kenny will cover ops. And Eric will cover dev. And as you can see, there are a ton of smaller items that we're working on here that are framed up in issues. If there's anything in particular that interests you here, we encourage you to jump in the issue, provide your feedback, help us think through these things. We will not have time to cover each of these in depth, so each of the section leaders will talk thematically and at a high level about some of the highlights. So with that, I will stop sharing and I'll turn it over to Josh.
Thanks, Scott. We have some really exciting changes coming here in 12.10 for enablement section. I'll get started with our Geo team first. Geo is our solution for both disaster recovery as well as also providing local nodes so users across the world can see increased performance. And one of the major objectives we've had recently is to improve the scope of what data types and features in GitLab are supported for Geo. And we've went through and added design management recently, and now we're working through and adding support for packages. And one of the key things we wanted to achieve when we're doing both of these is to not just add support for these particular data types, but also to go through and build a framework so that we can accelerate the support of Geo across all parts of GitLab, not just for existing features, but also for new features. And so we've been building out this self-service framework so that it's relatively trivial when a new feature is being written to go ahead and add support for Geo out of the box. And so this will make it more likely that features on initial support will have support for failing over and all those other nice benefits. So that's really exciting here. And again, we're working on delivering packages here in 12.10. We're also going through and trying to improve our UI. And so this is what the UI currently looks like if you're using Geo in the admin interface. And so you can see, for example, the progress of sync, as well as also some more details on where things are at. But we wanted to improve this. And so if you now mouse over, say the repositories or wikis or other content, you'll be able to get a sense in more detail of exactly what's happening with the exact counts. And so it's a little more transparent about what's actually happening in the GeoSync process itself. Moving on to distribution, as well as also a key theme of ours here, which is Postgres 11 support. We are making significant progress here with the goal of having PG10, Postgres 10, being opt-out in 12.10. This will mean that the default version of Postgres will be 12.10 for both new customers and existing customers. So if you utilize our own database within the Omnibus package or on the Helm chart, we will upgrade you from 9.6 or 10 up to 11. This is really key for us. It provides, number one, just general across the board performance improvements over the previous versions of Postgres. And it also allows us to take advantage of some new features like partitioning that can continue to help us accelerate performance and increase the scale of GitLab and what it can achieve. And so we're doing a lot of work here for PG10 in preparation for actually removing PG11, I'm sorry, in 9.6 and PG10 and 13.0, and then laying the foundation here for partitioning coming up. And so you can see we're also making some additional kind of planning support for partitioning here in the database group, so that when we're ready to take advantage of PG11, we can do so. And we're seeing, so for example, some increases in planning times when we currently utilize partition tables. And so we're trying to, in this case, get a better handle on what that looks like and how we can avoid those increases in planning times for the SQL queries going forward, so that we can take a full advantage of partitioning as soon as possible. Moving on to our memory team, another key objective here is enabling Puma across all of GitLab. We're already running Puma on GitLab.com. Puma is a multi-threaded application server, which offers around a 40% reduction in memory versus our previous application server, Unicorn. And so this can allow our customers to decrease their operational costs of GitLab, or potentially to just have an increased throughput on the same amount of machines. And so we're going through and addressing some remaining areas. We announced GA support for Puma in 12.9, or we'll be doing so in 4 days here. And we're going through addressing a couple last minute things and some documentation in preparation for making Puma opt out and the default in 13.0 here. So definitely check it out and give it a try. We're seeing great performance here in GitLab.com. We want to bring that to everyone and those savings and efficiency improvements for all of our GitLab users. Also in the database team or memory team here, we are also working to try to help improve the development practices of GitLab. And so we're adding some Rubocops for particular kind of degenerate use cases or inefficient programming models, and hoping to solve those before they even get into code base at all. For example, something as simple as what iterator you choose can have some significant performance impacts. For example, each with index is 30% slower than a simple index-based array. And so this will help to provide higher code quality and better performance across GitLab for all of our customers and users. And the final item here out of our memory team is we want to make plan limits. This is our application limits for GitLab, where we've been going through and adding some limits so that if you have unintentional or potentially intentional abuse, these can be stopped. And right now we're running this on GitLab.com. And we want to bring those same limits in place for all of our self-managed users as well, so they can realize those same benefits and isolation and performance improvements. And finally, we're also continuing to roll out advanced global search on GitLab.com. We have it around to a few percentage of our current paid groups today, and we are executing towards 10% or more coverage in this release in 12.10. And we're well on our way there. And so we're very comfortable about hitting that milestone in this release. And so we have a couple items we're doing here to just continue to improve with things like zero downtime reindexing and increasing the stability of our pipeline. But overall, that's the main objective, which is just increase this coverage. So thanks. And with that, I'll pass it back to Scott.
Thank you, Josh. Let's move on to David for Secure and Defend.
Okay, so to kind of kick us off here, I first wanted to let you know there were a couple shifting around of what our focuses are. And so as a high-level goal, our first objective for the year is air gap support within Secure, and you'll see that trickle through the update related to the Secure stage. We also want to become an application security testing leader. And so there'll be some items around that as well as we go through this conversation. So first, for the stack analysis group, the main thing I wanted to highlight for you is our support for the .NET framework. So SAST will be extended, and we're on track to have that as a highlighted item for 12.10. And if you want to read more about that, you can go and look at the issue. You can also go in and comment if you have any questions, and the product team will respond to you. Next, from dynamic analysis, a lot of the dynamic analysis effort over the last release was focused on air gap support for our DAS scanner and our DAS results. So with that, two of the items we talked about last time have shifted to this release. The one I wanted to highlight for you is showing the list of URLs. So that's available today in the console view, but this will be bringing it into the UI where you can begin to see what the DAS scanner found, and you then can adjust your scan accordingly if it's missing some paths to test. The other item that I think is pretty exciting is on the group level dashboard, we're adding in tracking of when the last security test was run. This is allowing you to understand where you are missing coverage on your testing. And here's a screenshot of what is coming out. So you can see at the top, this is the dashboard here. And on the right side, we've added a project scanning area. And the first area, it's showing how long it's been since certain projects have been scanned. And then you can also still see the list of things that have not yet been tested. So it's really going to give you the insight of what your true attack surface is and what you really need to focus on to improve your security testing. On the composition analysis team, again, they've been very busy on that first theme of air gap support. You can see out of the 2 items that they have landing here in 12.10, one is extending some of the functionality for the container scanning so it can run properly in an air gap environment, as well as some changes to allow things such as having the container scanner run multiple containers at once. So scan multiple containers as opposed to needing to do that as different jobs itself. On the defense side, we did reconsolidate some of the teams down, so the team names will be new on this call. Both Sam and Matt, in their individual videos that I recommend you watch, they did a very good job explaining the details of that. But the first is the Threat Insights group. This is taking the threat management group and extending what they're focused on. And this is really focused on the view of your security, whether that is the dashboards and the first class vulnerabilities we've been talking about, user and entity behavior analytics or UEBA of your GitLab instance, as well as our new functionality later this year focused on responsible disclosure and helping you get CVIDs and report vulnerabilities in your own application. For this release, for 12.10, that Threat Insights team is very much focused on finishing up the MVC for the first class vulnerabilities. With that, we'll begin to allow extension of what we can report on, including things like exporting reports into your own template and other historical heuristics-based reporting. For the container security group, this is the combination of application infrastructure security and runtime application security. They're heavily focused on what you can add to your environment to protect yourself. The first thing is the web application firewall, which we've been talking about since last year. Container network security just went out as minimal in the last release. So that's also very exciting. And then later in the year, they're focused on behavioral monitoring within your container. The one thing I want to highlight for you is being able to see the logs outside of the container. And so we've added the ability to send logs to an external log collector. You can see off the settings, you can get in and configure your SIEM settings, and then down here you can enter in the information. And this is going to work for both the WAF for mod security and Cilium or our container network security offering. Lots more exciting things are coming with Defend. We can talk about those in future calls, but with that, I'll hand it back over to Scott to move on to Kenny.
Thanks, David. I will hand this over to Kenny for the ops section.
Yeah, make sure I'm sharing my right screen. Here we go. Okay. All right. Yeah, my name is Kenny Johnston. I will be covering the ops section. We recently, you can think of it as a recombination, but the ops section now includes the verify, package, release, configure, and monitor stages. I'll admit that I'm fairly new to some of this scope, so I would highly encourage you to look to the experts and the videos that have been recorded by the teams to get a lot of this detail. I have spent some time ramping up, and so I have been thinking about a number of the issues that we're including in this section in terms of themes. And so I'll go through them by themes and they'll kind of jump around between different groups. The first primary theme that I spotted was just GitLab adding support for new application types. And so you can see that in examples like the runner team working on support for new and updated Windows server, the ability for the runner to work on new and updated Windows servers. You can see that in our support for PyPI repositories. So you can expand the usage of GitLab when you're working in Python to our package stage. You can see that in our, this issue is about adding Vault support. So if you've got applications that require retrieving secrets from Vault, This allows you to use a JSON web token to authenticate with Vault in your CI jobs and fetch those Vault secrets and return them so your CI job can complete. Another core theme is about expanding the breadth of our usage. So this is about current users of GitLab using additional stages. We believe in a single application, and we're trying to encourage the support, encourage the usage of these other stages with your current, typically customers start with source control. So they're about expanding on source control. The first is really about helping users adopt GitLab CI. And today, lots of folks are coming from Jenkins, and it's difficult to quickly migrate between Jenkins and GitLab. There are different parameters and paradigms for how you should construct your pipelines. So we're going to be adding this ability to to execute Jenkins within your GitLab CI jobs. It's kind of, you can think of it as a wrapper around GitLab or Jenkins jobs within GitLab. We think that that will be helpful, and by adding that and a significant amount of documentation around just how to do that and how to migrate between Jenkins and GitLab CI will speed that process along for users who are beginning their journey to GitLab CI. The next is about adding the ability to have the results of your accessibility scans directly in the merge request widget. And so when you're looking at your merge request, you can see this in this design, you would get the results of the accessibility scan right here in your merge request. The next is issues about our progressive delivery. So today you can, and many users do, use GitLab for blue-green deployments, but it's not well documented. So we think a first step here is to make sure users are well aware and can easily set up through documentation CI pipelines that allow this kind of blue-green deployments. Next, we'll be working on this, the usage of the release stage and the ability to edit your release content and the milestones associated with the release directly in the edit page. Today, that can only be done when you originally create the release. And so we're adding this improved capability so more users will adopt our release stage features. The next is about deploy freezes. So many organizations have specific windows where they would like to not deploy to production, for example. And so we're going to be adding an initial MVC that allows you to both define that a job can run except for in a freeze. So and a new except term for freeze. I think that term is still a little bit up for debate in this issue. And then also define a kind of cron syntax for when that freeze is in place. Next, we'll be working on converting. So GitLab is, if you're familiar, dashboards.gitlab.com has a whole host of the dashboards that GitLab uses to support our production gitlab.com instance. And we'll be converting one of these dashboard charts, the kind of triage dashboard chart that team uses, to GitLab dashboards that are in the monitor stage. This is an important component of dogfooding for us. We'll also showcase to our users that our dashboarding capability directly within the GitLab UI is ready for prime time. The next is, if you're a user of GitLab dashboard charts, you've seen that we automatically add this annotation anytime there's a deployment, which is a great example of our kind of single application. We know when deployments happen and we can showcase that on appropriate dashboards. We're going to be adding the ability to add custom annotations. So instead of a deploy icon, you get these kind of custom icons, and you can add the text that you'd like to your metrics charts. We'll also be adding, expanding on our ability on our recent addition of the Log Explorer by adding the ability to filter those logs and search within those logs. So that's here. And then something I'm particularly excited about, GitLab comes with our metrics capabilities come with a set of out-of-the-box charts for things like Nginx. So that's the service response time and error rate typically you get from Nginx of your application when deployed. We want to expose the ability to set up alerts and respond to those alerts to more users. And so we'll be adding kind of out-of-the-box alert setup to Auto DevOps. The next theme that I wanted to highlight, so the first themes were adding more application types, and the next one was about adding breadth. This is really about showcasing new users to new experiences, whether that's with a specific application type or a new stage that their application is going to be using within GitLab. The next theme is really about efficiency for those who are already using. So And I've noticed within the verify, package, and release stage, there's a lot of focus on making sure that we do things fast, that we really want to make sure our users are efficient in their usage of our tool. So the first one is about ensuring that when you add an after script and you cancel a job, that after script still runs. It's the expected behavior of many users. So we're going to be adding that within the runner team. The next is adding support for AWS Fargate and auto scaling CI. This allows our users to not have to manage a bunch of different CI, a bunch of different runner groups, and they can easily connect to their AWS Fargate account and know that their CI jobs will kind of scale automatically for them. The next is to run tests when you're in your CI jobs on the new files first. So this is important because instead of having to wait for the entire test to run, including tests on changes that weren't, or on code that wasn't changed in the commit that you're testing, you can get the results of those files that were changed quickly to speed up the feedback loop. Next, we'll be adding the ability to purge your dependency proxy. So the dependency proxy is a really useful tool for users who are using GitLab package stage features to not have to continually retrieve various artifacts from GitLab services. So you can cache specific images, for instance, or packages so that they're available. This allows users to purge that if they want to kind of force the reset of their cache. We're also adding a couple of just UX improvements to enhance the efficiency of using the features in the package repository or in the package stage. The first is ability to filter package in the package list in your package registry by things like package name. And the other is, let me see if I can get this. Yeah, when you're looking at your registry, there's no quick link to how to build an image or push an image to that registry. It is available when you first create it, and there's nothing in the repository, but not after that. So this keeps that top of mind for any user looking at the registry. And then next, in the release stage, when you've set up merge trains, we still had this quick action for /merge, and that was not necessarily clear what was going to happen if you did a /merge quick action, if merge trains were set up or if the pipelines had succeeded or not. So we're adding this improved UI so that you know when you are using the /merge action, what action that is going to take. There's an example of the preview of that. And then the next two are from the monitor stage. The first is ability to automatically add the chart for the metric that was triggered when an incident issue is triggered. This makes it so that you don't have to go look at a chart and then paste back in the chart link. It's automatically there, right? So when you're firefighting, you can efficiently get up to speed on what metric was triggered and kind of how the trend of that metric has been going. And then the last is that when you are looking at a chart like that and an alert is firing, today you wouldn't necessarily know that what alert specifically is firing. You can have multiple alerts on a chart, and there's no indication in some cases that an alert has fired and what threshold has been breached. So we'll be adding this improved UI to quickly show you which alerts have been applied and which one is firing at what point when you're looking at the chart. So those are a number of the issues. And again, the core themes have been about adding application types, expanding the breadth of your usage of GitLab, and then making it efficient to use the components of GitLab that you are using. With that, I will hand it back to you, Scott.
Thanks, Kenny. Eric Brinkman will bring us home on dev.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. My name is Eric Brinkman. I'm the product director for the dev section. The dev section is the first 3 stages of the DevOps lifecycle. So it includes the manage, plan, and create stages. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk through each of those stages quickly. As a reminder, the dev section has 16 groups. And so I'm not able to talk about each of the groups today, just due to time. So please go ahead and check out that kickoff page that Scott mentioned. And each of the groups did record a video, and they're all doing some amazing work. And so if I don't highlight them, it's not because I don't want to, it's just we don't have time to do it today. But please do check out those videos and some of the items that those teams are releasing. So in the manage stage, we have really two big themes that we're focused on in 12.10. The first theme is group management, and the second theme is compliance. I'm just going to talk about a few issues that are going to push our vision forward in each of those areas. The first issue I'm going to talk about is our ability to optionally disable group membership inheritance. If you've used GitLab for a long time, you've gotten used to how our groups work. And if you're a member of a top level group and you make a subgroup underneath that group, then you're automatically a member of that subgroup as well. And this works great, especially in organizations like GitLab, where everything's transparent and we want everyone to have context and see everything, but it doesn't work great in highly regulated environments, or where environments where you're employing a least privileged methodology, where you need people to really be isolated and have very specific access. And so we're going to provide an optional toggle to disable group membership inheritance, which will happen at the top level group. And so you can set this at the top level group, and then any subgroup you make below that will not inherit group membership. So you'll have to explicitly add people to the groups. And so this will be really useful and helpful to those organizations that really need to segment and isolate group membership. I apologize for the printer that just went off. I think we're printing some homeschool stuff. Sorry about that. The second group membership item is extending group managed accounts to all groups. And so in 12.1, we introduced the concept of a group managed account, which works great if you're using SAML SSO. And it allows you to basically say, you have to be using this user in this group, and you can't do anything else outside of the group. That's great if you want a whole bunch of control and isolation. But we see no reason to limit this if you're just using SAML SSO. So we want to extend the group managed account construct to all groups and have it as an option. And then on compliance, when we think of compliance inside of GitLab, we want obviously the GitLab instance and application to be compliant for you, but we also want you to be able to track and manage your compliance frameworks right inside of GitLab. We have a very robust issue framework. And so we're going to release an MVC that's going to allow you to very quickly generate all the issues that you would need to prove a HIPAA audit protocol right inside of GitLab. So if you create a project template based off of this template, then you'll generate all of the issues that you need to essentially prove to an auditor that you are passing your HIPAA audit. Now, obviously, you'll need to upload your evidence and write how you're actually meeting some of the criteria. But we really want to streamline audit management inside of GitLab, and this is our first step in doing so. Moving on to the plan stage, we have one big theme in plan, which is the Jira importer. And so we're going to be releasing a minimum viable change for our Jira importer, which will bring over Jira issue summaries and bring those into GitLab issue titles, and then Jira issue descriptions and bring those into GitLab issue descriptions. And this is really important because when we see people adopt GitLab, they start with source code management and CI, and then they realize we have all this other great functionality to the left and right of those stages. And so Kenny and David talked about some of our monitoring and security features. But to the left of source code management, we also have issue tracking. We have a whole bunch of great features like issue tracking and epics and roadmaps. And you can do all sorts of product and project management work right inside of GitLab. And we want those customers of ours that realize that, hey, you can just consolidate all of these use cases into one application to very easily migrate from other tools. And the first of those is obviously Jira, which has the most market share of any project or portfolio management tool on the market. So we'll be delivering our MVC for Jira importer in 12.10, which is very exciting. And then of course, following on with other features to pull in other required data elements that some customers may need to bring over from Jira as well. And one other cool feature that I think I wanted to highlight really quickly is that you can have confidential issues today inside of GitLab, but you can't have confidential epics. And so we're going to allow the confidential toggle to be set on epics. So this is both for new epics as well as epics that already exist. So pretty exciting functionality there. And then moving into our home stretch, our create stage. We've got really three big themes, and they really shouldn't be too surprising. The first theme is obviously Gitly for Gitly HA, which is Gitly high availability. We have a theme on multi-line comments and another theme on static site editing. And so we'll go ahead and start with multi-line comments. This is something that we've had our eye on for a long time, and it's also something that GitHub has recently released. And it's just in general a very useful feature. Right now, you can comment on a single line in a diff if you're walking through some sort of code review process. But a single line isn't always necessary, or isn't always adequate, because you might have a function or a block of logic that you want to have a comment that applies to that entire line. And so we're going to release an MVC in 12.10 that will focus on multi-line merge request comments. So really, really exciting to bring us up to a feature that really a lot of developers really do need as they're working through code review. And then we recently created a new group in Create called the Static Site Editing group. And this group has been one that's been forming over the past few months and is now ready to start delivering features into the product. And so we've been thinking about, how do we deliver a static site editing experience inside of GitLab? And if you think about that as a huge feature inside of GitLab, it's a little bit daunting to think about, oh, do we have to build authentication systems? Or are we building an entire CMS? But we took a step back, and in typical GitLab fashion, we're going to deliver a very pared back MVC to get us started, to take that first step on the static site editing journey. And how we're going to do this is we're going to provide functionality to edit a single middleman page using a very specific and simplified markdown editor. And so it's going to be a very scoped journey that will obviously be extended over time. And the reason that we're starting with middleman is because the GitLab handbook is written and served via middleman. And so obviously dogfooding at GitLab is very important. We want to make sure that whatever we're developing is getting used, because the more people that use it, the better that it's going to be over the long term. And so our hope is that we can develop this static site editing experience, dogfood it, and improve it very, very quickly. And of course, support other frameworks in the future. But really excited to see the first iteration here on static site editing. And then the last thing that I just want to highlight is our continued work on HA Giddily. And so in 12.9, we released our alpha version of HA Giddily, or we're going to release our alpha version of HA Giddily here in another 4 days. And then in 12.10, we'll continue building on the functionality to make it more robust and marching towards our general availability for high availability Git inside of GitLab. So that's it for the dev section. And back to you, Scott.
All right, thank you to each of the presenters and all the teams and contributors behind it. This certainly looks like it's going to be the best release ever. And to all who joined us on this call, thank you for your time. I forgot the usual disclaimer that we do plan ambitiously. So the things we presented today, this is what we're aiming for in 12.10. However, things can and will change. So please don't view this as a promise. And otherwise, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.